It is estimated that 2.7 million Canadians have strep throat. The population of Canada is approximately 35 million people. The test for strep throat has an accuracy rate of 98%. Create a table using this information. And then we're going to use that table to answer questions A and B. Now, we can see, and this of course is all made up data, right? 2.7 million people in Canada have strep throat. That's how many have it. 35 million people total, and we've got an accuracy rate of 98%. So we can think our probability table. So we know 35 million people total, and 2.7 million of them have strep throat. That was given to us. Well, I don't need the word million. I'm just going to say, you know what? All of my numbers are in millions. That's what I'm going to use. And that works. So we can say, well, I know if I have 35 million people total and 2.7 million of them have strep throat, then 32.3 million do not have strep throat. I would want to be one of them. One of those 32.3 million. Okay, now we have a 98% accuracy rate. If you go to the doctor and you have strep throat, you would expect the test to show positive, right? You want the doctor to walk in and say, yes, you have strep throat. Okay, so that means, in my red box, 98% of that people, so times 2.7 million, are going to test positive. So 2.646 million people are going to test positive. Now, that means, well, if I had 2.7 million who had strep throat, 2.646 tested positive, that means 0.054 million people will test negative. Should make sense, hopefully. Okay, now, if you go to the doctor and you do not have strep throat, you would expect them to say, you do not have strep throat, right? You would expect to test negative. So the 98%, if you don't have it, you would expect to test negative. So my 32.3 million people who do not have strep throat, 98% of them are going to test negative, which is 31.654. And that means if I had 32.3 million and I subtract the 31.654 million who tested negative, the rest of them, which is 0.646, would test positive. Put 0 in front of that. All right, now to get our totals, the totals who tested positive, right, I'm simply adding at this point. So when I add that column, there will be 3.292 million people who test positive and 31.708 million who test negative. Now, when you add the positive test and the negative test together, they should equal 35, and they do. Okay, so we now have our probability table created, and we can use that table to answer questions A and B. So, letter A. If someone tests positive, so they're testing positive, we'll go back. This is how many people tested positive. So 3.292 is going to be my denominator. What is probability they don't have strep throat? Well, 0.646. That's how many millions, right, do not have strep throat, but they tested positive. So we have a 0.196 chance, or a 19.6% chance of being told, hey, you have strep throat, but you really don't have it. We call this a false positive. It's a false positive because you are told you have something. You tested positive, but you don't. It's false. So that's why it's a false positive, because you were told it's positive, but it's wrong. And that's kind of just an addition. That's not part of the question. Okay, letter B. If somebody tests negative, well, 31.708 million people tested negative. What's probability they do have strep throat? Well, 0.054 have strep throat but tested negative. So that gives us 0.002. So there's a 0.2% chance that you'll be told, hey, you're good, you do not have strep throat, but you actually do have it. So we call this a false negative because you tested negative, but you really actually do have, in this case, strep throat.